Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching accesstv.org.
Morning. I'm here with you again today. I'm Miss Cleo, and I own Call Books on 677 Blue Hills Avenue. And this week, I was just reading, and so my mind just got so full of so many things. And then on Tuesday, I went to vote, and then my mind just sort of stretched out. I went to see a friend, and I said, "Oh, I'm going to vote. Have you already voted?" And she says, "Voting? What are we voting for today?" I said, "Oh my goodness." So I said, it's the Board of Education. And there's 3 very important questions that we need to answer. So you need to get your coat and let's go, because we're going to go vote. So we went down to vote, and I told her how to answer those questions. And she said, okay. And then when we got down to the voting area, there was a gentleman there who told her to vote the other way for all 3 of those questions. And she didn't know who was running for the Board of Education. She didn't know anything. She said, "Well, I didn't get any literature. I didn't get any phone calls. What's this? I didn't get anything. I didn't even hear about it." So there wasn't as much publicity about this campaign or this election as usual. But it was happening. I didn't know why. So I went in and I voted, and I got out real quick and got my little sticker. She stayed in and pondered the questions. And when she could not understand one question, she said, "I voted the way you said, Cleo, because I didn't understand those questions." And the questions, of course, would have had to be studied and thought about before you ever got into the poll, because the English that they use is not exactly clear to the average everyday person. So she voted the way I said. And of course, anyway, if one of her friends could have come to her, or somebody else, or if I hadn't been there, she would have voted the way the gentleman said. So that was kind of disturbing to me. And I started to think about a lot of things, even looking at the young people on the street, and I was getting a little discouraged. I picked up this book, and I'm not going to read it to you. I'm just going to read you a couple of lines in it. Miss Crandall's School for Young Ladies and Little Misses of Color by Elizabeth Alexander and Marilyn Nelson, and pictures by Floyd Cooper. And it's a really beautiful, beautiful book. Marilyn Nelson, I think that she teaches at UConn. I'm going to read you a little bit of the jacket. "Miss Crandall, you stand accused of knowingly teaching colored persons, not residents of the state, without prior consent. What is your plea?" Her young students knew that Miss Crandall had committed no crime. They knew that the real criminals were the rich white residents of Canterbury, Connecticut, who had poisoned the school's water and set fire to the schoolhouse. But racism could not keep these girls from their schooling, nor could hatred destroy the patience and compassion that Miss Crandall had taught them. From March of 1833 to September of 1834, when persecution forced the school to close, these African American women, many the daughters of free slaves, learned that they deserved an education. What they needed was the courage to go after it. What we need today is to go after education for our children. Good education for our children. And there's a poem on the back of this. This book is sold in my store if you want to come and get it. It is a wonderful book about a little girl who has to leave home, and tells you all the names of the little girls who Miss Crandall taught. You may be related to one of them. And what she went through to teach these so-called colored girls at the time how to read, how important that was, and what they risked to do that. This is called A Fire from the Gods. I didn't know how much I didn't know. Like Brer Mosquito or Brer Elephant, now I know my capacity for awe and infinite. This thirst is permanent. The well bottomless, my good fortune vast. An uneducated mind is a calendar, is a clenched fist that can open like a bud into a flower, who's being reached every waking hour, and who sleeps a fragrant dream of gratitude. Now it's illegal. It's legal. Illegitimate to teach brown girls who aren't state residents, as if teachers stealing fire from the gods, as if the ancestors aren't tickled to death to see a child they lived toward find her mind's infinity. A wonderful book. I started with that, and I bought about 4 books here. I'm going to read a little bit about all of them. This is Claude W. Ford, the hero with African face, mystic wisdom of traditional Africa. In the summer of 1968, on the west coast of Africa, I stood facing the Elmina slave castle, a place where countless thousands of Africans had begun their passage into a desolate and treacherous unknown. The Atlantic lashed the rocks around this ominous monolith, can't pronounce it, of weather-beaten white stone, built by the Portuguese in 1482. It served the slave trade for nearly 400 years. An African caretaker, a wizened, slightly stooped old man, emerged from the shadows carrying an oil lamp. "This way," he intoned in a high-pitched, cracking whisper, staring at me and motioning with his finger. I stepped across the threshold of this dark fortress and began my descent into the abyss. A long, narrow passageway led down to the chamber where male slaves were held. It was dark and damp, and walking upright was out of the question. I had to crunch so low I was almost on all fours. And as the caretaker bent over, the iron handle on his oil lamp groaned. About halfway down this cramped corridor, the old man passed abruptly in front of an iron-reinforced wood door. "When a slave died," he murmured, "this door was opened and his body was washed out to sea. The rhythm drone of waves surrounded us as we plunged deeper into the castle's inner vault. Some 50 feet beneath the water, there the old man dimmed his lamp and when my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I could just make out a window the size of my fist atop a small shaft leading up from the cave we were now in. Through that small opening came the only air and light allowed into this thankless pit. As I moved around to take the measure of this awful place, I felt something under my feet and heard a crunching sound, like stepping on fallen leaves, only heavier and metallic. Unable to see, I reached down and groped in the dark until my fingers found their way over one, then two, then three links. It was a chain. I was walking on the rusted remains of slave chains. The more I moved about this Neptunian dungeon, the more I realized the rusting chains were everywhere. At first, the caretaker said nothing. Surely he had seen this before, the sons of slaves walking on the chains of their fathers. What words could capture this scene? You know, I finally said in a slow, measured canison, your ancestors could have been in this very room. But I was already beyond the caretaker's words, for my body had grown heavy and my feet felt shackled in place. Then I thought I heard voices. At first I was sure it was just the roar of the sea. But finally I heard these voices. I listened closely and I heard conversation. I heard, "Whatever you do, my son." The voices seemed to say in unison, "Make your life count for us. Whatever you do, my son, make your life count for us. Whatever you do, my son, make your life count for us." The echo slowly trailed away. That's all I have time for today, but I have more in our next visit. So come back and hear some more about my wandering week and my head being all confused. So read a little, write a little, be good to each other. I'll see you next time.